Don't kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Welcome to my Batman 1989 retrospective. I felt like it was the perfect opportunity to talk about this movie since, well, it's technically 34 years old, but I use 30 years old as the title of the video. I don't like having even numbers in my videos. And also, it's a perfect opportunity to talk about this movie as well due to the fact that it's Michael Keaton's birthday here on September 5th. And plus, on top of that, conveniently, old tweets from James Gunn had resurfaced with him bashing the original 89 movie. So I figured, why not just give my take on it and talk about things that really worked in this movie and some things that may not have worked even at the time. The huge majority of what I have to say with this movie is going to be very, very positive. And number one, I want to start off with the soundtrack. I cannot talk about this movie enough with the soundtrack because this movie created the ideal sound for Batman. With the Nolan trilogy, they had great pieces of music in there and I loved the trilogy, but one thing I did notice when I watched those movies again is that the soundtrack does not sound particularly Batman to me. This movie really set a trend for how Batman soundtrack should sound going forward. For example, with the animated series, they really adapted this soundtrack and had Shirley Walker put her own little twist on there, and it worked out perfectly for the character, and that's like the pinnacle of Batman sounds right there. And the Batman theme in this movie is really, really well done. This is back when Danny Elfman was at his peak and created something that's really iconic and arguably even more recognizable than the Superman theme. I feel like I don't really need to do a plot-by-plot synopsis of this movie, considering the fact that I'm pretty sure everybody watching this video has already seen the 89 Batman movie. And starting off, we're talking about Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton was very controversial at the time in the picking from Tim Burton, stating, why is this guy from Mr. Mom being Batman or Beetlejuice?
And I just like to say, when you come from a family like mine, and you come from where I come from, all you gotta do is tell me no, baby. So just keep those cards and letters coming.
Which, I can see the arguments being made for that, because yes, Michael Keaton is a very short guy. He's not the most muscular guy, but he really did have Batman down, especially at the time, and still to this day, with him resurfacing in The Flash, he still just had it. He was like riding a bike for him.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. I'm Batman.
And also, something that they said in the casting was that they said they wanted to get somebody who needed to dress like a bat to intimidate people. And that's what I get from Michael Keaton's version of Bruce Wayne, is that he does look like the type of guy who needs to dress up as a bat to intimidate people. He also looks like the type of guy who definitely has a certain offness to him, particularly with his Bruce Wayne. The way he kind of plays him is a little bit quirky. He doesn't really look like he socializes a super ton, which feels a little bit more realistic in a weird, odd way. But at the same time, at the point in the story that they're trying to tell for this version of Batman and him being the billionaire and he's having these gatherings at his house, he probably should be a little bit more social and a little bit more playboyish at this period. I also think the time period of which this movie took place, or at least these key events happened in this movie, may have been earlier in his career, because Batman is still known as a urban legend or a myth.
Nice outfit.
all in all, Michael Keaton is fantastic. Not my favorite Bruce Wayne in these movies. Yeah, I can believe this guy would dress up as a giant bat, but at the same time, I still love his Batman. He's just incredible. Iconic lines throughout the movie.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
He actually even talks less than Pattinson's version of Batman, believe it or not. And that also adds more to the mysterious factor of this character, that he's a little bit more in the shadows, while the Joker is the one getting the center of attention, which is generally what the character is. He wants the attention. He wants to be center stage. He wants to be noticed, whereas Batman's supposed to be the inverse. Recreating the character, or kind of bringing him back to his darker roots in this movie, because before this movie came out, people were worried that they were going to go campy again, like the Adam West series did. But to ensure that they didn't go that way, they also changed up the suit quite a bit. The suit was all black and had yellow bits on the suit as well, which also set a trend for how Batsuit should look going forward, even the Nolan trilogy adopting this idea. It wasn't really even until Ben Affleck that we really got the gray Batsuit back in live action. And we really have this movie to thank for really truly making people take comic book movies serious. Christopher Reeves in Superman, that one made people take casting seriously and take these movies very seriously, but at the same time, it's not until Batman that we finally start getting the darker superhero movies. I still think that the Batmobile holds up still to this day and is still my favorite interpretation of the car. I think it looks fantastic. It looks very just outlandish and crazy in parts, but at the same time it looks like something straight out of the comic books brought on the screen. And it has like the little bat fins on the back, really showing that they're emphasizing the bat in the Batmobile. And that's something I've always loved about this version, is that this movie is also incredibly campy in parts, which leads me into my next discussion, which is the fact that this is a comic book movie. I know you guys are going, well, duh, isn't this a comic book movie? Like, I mean, it's Batman. But no, you notice that Batman movies after this point, especially with the Nolan trilogy, really went extremely realistic and try to keep the character as real and grounded as possible, which there's nothing wrong with that. They're great movies that done that. But at the same time, much like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, they were not afraid to go for it. Now, this may not work for everybody, which I think is why the Sam Raimi movies are more widely accepted more than this movie, because Spider-Man's more of a colorful character. But with characters like the Joker, that campiness really works for a character like that, considering the fact that Jack Nicholson in this movie is fantastic. And if he wasn't the third favorite Joker on my list, he would be number one, due to the fact that if you're to argue who's the most comic book accurate, I would have to give this one to Jack, because he really does have the character down, and they really bring elements from the comic book onto the big screen.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Even going down the chemical bath, how many Batman movies do you see nowadays that do that? Well, it's outside of Jared Leto, but I don't need to tell you about that. Shut up. Wacky gimmicks, him dancing the Prince, just messing up a museum, his introduction scene, all of these felt very Joker. And he's more of the mob boss Joker, which if you look at the animated series took a lot of influence from the comic books, not just the comic books, but this particular version of the Joker. And for good reason. I mean, this is a great interpretation, and again, if Heath was not number one, I think that he would be number one instead.
Know your fucking place, trash!
They do change up the origin, which I was never a big fan of the fact that they tied Joker back to Batman's past of him killing his parents. I thought that was really unnecessary and didn't really work for me personally, especially considering the fact that now there's a face to the killer, and with this particular version of Batman being a killer himself, it just doesn't work out for me personally, and I think they could have handled that element a little bit better and maybe even just removed it.
You idiot! You made me, remember? You dropped me into that vat of chemicals. That wasn't easy to get over. And don't think that I didn't try. I know you did.
They also changed the origin to the fact that normally the Joker's never had a definitive origin, or so it seems. I mean, the Killing Joke is the closest that we got to it with the failing comedian, but at the same time, it was never definitively his origin. He said that if he preferred to have an origin, it would be multiple choice. In this movie, he was a mob boss, and then he was double-crossed because he was sleeping with his higher-up's boss, or his higher-up's girl, and ended up getting sold out, and he falls into a vat of chemicals as Batman tries to stop him. There are elements from the Killing Joke backstory that they have in there where essentially instead of him being brought into Ace Chemicals from this gang to help him steal some stuff, instead he's leading this gang, and they just so happen to get double crossed, and it's shot for shot very much close to the comic book. I mean, you look at that and you're like, wow, there's a lot of influence there, but at the same time they make minor changes that just personally don't work as well for me, considering the fact that, again, I don't like the Joker having a definitive origin, but I allow it because I think that they still brought in the Ace Chemicals bit very naturally within the story that they're telling. While this movie can be very goofy at times, yes, I have to acknowledge Batman's turn in this movie doesn't really age quite as well, especially considering Returns actually shot some of those scenes of him turning better, but there are scenes in this movie where he turns that looks absolutely hilarious. I think a level of campiness also comes from some of the effects as well, because there are shots in this movie where they decide to animate stuff when it's really far away. Like there's a shot where Batman has a shadow, and that didn't really look that great, or the Joker when he officially dies at the end of the movie because Batman murders him. Then Joker goes full-on Looney Tunes. Like, some of those parts just didn't work for me personally. Also, admittedly, some of the hand-to-hand stuff that Batman does in this movie doesn't age quite as well, considering the fact that the suit is very stiff. So you can tell that even the stunt performers are having a bit of a difficult time performing in some of these scenes. With the exception of the Bell Tower fight, I think that fight still holds up very well as a finale fight. I think it looked really, really cool, and especially with him having this back and forth between this big henchman that he had, it was really good stuff in the movie. I also think that's something that doesn't quite hold up for me as well either, is the fact that Batman's going around killing. I mean, I'm not up in arms about it like everybody is, like, oh, Batman shouldn't kill people. Like, I mean, if you're telling that in your story, fine, whatever, but I'm just saying for my definitive Batman, I prefer for him not to kill people.
I'm not a coward who hides behind a gun. I would never take the life of another, for I am...
Batman, look out!
I think one thing that I also really loved about this movie too, to get more on the positive, is the fact that I think that the look of Gotham looks incredible. Like, really, really good. Like, Tim Burton's Gotham was like the set standard for me personally, because they have the filthiness, the gothic look of it down. Pattinson's comes in second place for me, and Nolan's comes in third because of that first movie where they were in the Narrows, but then it just went downhill from there and it just looked like Chicago or New York. This was like the set standard for me, and this Gotham City and the set design in this movie, including the Batcave and some things like the Joker's lair, really good set design in this movie, and they did a fantastic job with that. And Tim Burton's vision of the character is something I would imagine with the more gothic vibe of Batman. I mean, the city is literally called Gotham, so I think hiring a guy like Tim Burton to do something gothic for your interpretation of Batman is probably maybe the best thing visually. And we absolutely do. We do get really good shots in this movie, arguably, and things that feel directly like the character. Vicky Vale really felt real in multiple instances, but at the same time you can tell that they threw her in, like the script that they handed her, the actress to play as Vicky Vale is you know, just romantic interest. That's all she has. She doesn't have anything super crazy to her character. She's there for Batman to save her, and that's about it.
Go.
That may not have aged as well for me personally, but she served her purpose in the story. She didn't add anything substantial. It wasn't until really like Selena Kyle that I really found myself liking that love interest that they had in that. But in this movie, Vicky Vale served the purpose that she was in for the story, and it worked well enough. But I'm glad that she was a one-off. And it did feel kind of off that Alfred would just let her in the Batcave like that. I mean, personally, I would be pissed off at Alfred for that. And even though I was praising the soundtrack in this movie, I still think that some of it doesn't hold up as well. I mean, it's fun, don't get me wrong. I love Prince, and the soundtrack that was created for this movie. But I mean, the music with Prince and some of those parts with the Joker really made this movie feel a little bit more like a product of its time.
Just who do you trust? What makes you a real lover? Trust. I put this question to you 'cause I'm big. You can have it all if there's trust.
And I mean, that's fine. There are great movies that are products of their time, but in terms of saying that it holds up, this movie definitely holds up very well, but at the same time, it's just simple things like that that kind of hold it back just a little bit from people who are maybe in the younger generation. The story was very solid. I think the characters were pretty solid in this movie as well. I mean, Batman wasn't super interesting. It wasn't really a focal point, which is fine, but at the same time, I mean, the movie's titled Batman, so come on, let's get a little bit more Batman in. Jack Nicholson's Joker was just chef's kiss in this movie. I really loved, again, some parts of the soundtrack. I mean, that created the definitive sound for Batman. And I really am appreciative of this movie for bringing back Batman to his darker roots and making him a character that is more loved now more than any other time.